Okay, let's check the book. Yeah? Let's check the book. Doop. 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 Gamers United. What was it? So here's the thing, before I even really get into this, I know that I'm going to come across a bit of a problem. It's a little bit of a problem, and that's that Gamers United is now a real thing. When I was doing it, as far as we knew, it was not. But what was it? Well, okay. For people that have been in the after streams, sometimes when we do an episode on the Sentai review, I will come in to the Discord and I will talk on the voice channel to people and I'll just hang out and I'll mention some things. And this actually gets mentioned on the show from time to time, and it even gets mentioned on this show from time to time. For some reason, the film crew does not game well together. Ever. Like fucking ever. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what causes it, but we do not game well. We never have, and as far as I could tell, we never will. But for a while there's a reason we did game very well together, and that is what makes the fact that we don't now so damn irritating. So here's the thing. Gamers United was a group that me and a couple of friends started. We got into video games hardcore, and we used to spend our weekends hanging out playing games. Then, of course, we would spend our weekdays hanging out playing games. When it became apparent that a lot of what we were doing was playing games like alone together, I would get a copy of, like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know if that's going to appear on it, but like the screen just bugged out like crazy. So maybe that's in the video. I don't know. But look, we would get together and I would get like a copy of Resident Evil Code Veronica. And I'd be like, yes, new Resident Evil. And I brought that over. I packed up my PlayStation 2 and I went on down to my buddy Anthony's and I sat down and I turned that bitch on and we sat around the TV and we would, like, for some reason we could play these one-player games very well together. I would play for like a little while and he would sit there and he'd be watching me and I'd get like an hour in or whatever, and I don't want him to get like behind, because then if it's going to be his boss fight or something like that, he's going to get fucked. So I gave him the controller and be like, this is currently where we're going or whatever, and he's like, yeah, I know, I've been watching. So then he goes and then he would give it back to me after about an hour or so, and this worked. It was just a system that worked. And then for some reason, we got to realizing that we were constantly playing one-player games. And the idea came up that since we're always hanging out and we're always playing games, why don't we find multiplayer games that work for us? That's how the idea got started. The idea was to make a club. And we even got other people that we weren't 100% associated in on it. Because our friend group, our main friend group that hung out all the time, we had this thing that we called the Bubble. I don't know why that was a term, but that was our friend group. We called ourselves the Bubble. And it consisted of multiple groups inside of a group that would then come together and hang out sometimes. The main stay that happened most often would be like me, my buddy Anthony, Brandon. Then, on days that we could do so, we would involve other parts of the group. So we'd have the girls over, and we'd bring over Seth and everybody, and Seth was like an in-out of the group depending on what was going on. So he was either in the mainstay with us, or sometimes he would break off into another social circle because he did things like wrestling and things like that. So he would hang out with my buddy Craig and everybody over here. And that was fine. We were all friends. And then this idea came about to make something, and we called Gamers United, which was a club. We immediately set the foundation to create leaders. I was deemed the PlayStation 2 leader. And then we had a Nintendo leader, and then we had an Xbox leader. And those 3 leaders were in charge of creating events. So it would be like, this is a PlayStation weekend, that's you, Bill. So every week that I had the opportunity, that I was able to acquire money, because I did a lot of lawn work and shit like that, and I did random work for this area called the 309 Complex, which was a group of like 5 houses that all had the 309 address. It'd be like 309A, 309B, 309C. Anyways, there was a group of houses, and I did work for them. I would mow all their lawns, and I would clean things up, and I would go up and clean out gutters, and just whatever I would do, and I would get money. And I would immediately go, that was the point of being a leader, too. You had to have the money to provide for the systems. So there was a checklist that was on my wall that said, like, PlayStation multi-tap 4 controllers. Those had to be checked every weekend to make sure they were still working, and if they weren't, it was my responsibility to acquire said things. Then it was also my responsibility to buy games, and this added to experimentation in a massive way, because we would buy anything that said multiplayer. Like anything. We'd go to the store, we'd go to GameStop, we'd look around, and there would be like 100+ games, and sometimes they would just throw these games in like a bargain bin thing, and we'd buy one major game that we knew we were going to play. It was like $50-$60. Then we'd go over to the bargain bin and we'd be like, it's $5, it's $10, it's 12, it's 6, it's 4, it's 2. Oh, this has to be crap. And we'd buy it anyway. We'd buy like entire bags of games. Then we'd go over and we'd get a drink, and we'd go over to the arcade and we'd break out the last of our money in the arcade. Then we'd leave the arcade and go back home and prepare for the weekend. Well, when Saturday would come, we would all gather, and we called this group Gamers United, and it would take place in 3 or 4 different areas. Mostly it took place in this attic room that we had. And we would go up there, and then whoever was in charge of setting the event would set the event. And we would have these cool things like, one day we did Federation versus Xeon Gundam. We had this massive fight where we created like a war zone, almost like a risk board. And we said, okay, you're moving here, you fight this, blah, blah, blah. And we got this whole thing running, and then at the end of the night, it came down to just me and just Seth, and it was decided that since we had tied, we were going to break the tie right here. This is what was going to do it. Now, at the start of all this, we had put in money into a collection where everybody that was going to play threw in $3. Not a big deal. $3, whatever. You throw it in, and at the end, whoever's going to win this gets the whole pot. We had like 12 players or something like that. So there was a good little stack of cash sitting there that was on the line. We both picked random. That's what was decided. And I'm going to say this. Seth got screwed because we both picked random. He got a really good unit. I did not. I got like a Zaku 1 or some shit. Like no fucking chance at all against what he got. I can't remember what he landed, but it was way better than what I got. So, now you would argue, for those that have played the game, well, Bill, if you were good enough, well, you know what, you could be as good as you want to be. And I realize that the bar tries to even by saying that this is rated a 5 and I'm rated a 2, so I only get so many points or he only gets so many points. When you're a Zaku 1, and he's a fucking RX-78, and it only takes him one pew to kill me, and all it's doing is pew 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 pew, and he doesn't even get a stun from it. He's just like, okay, yeah, pew, and I'm dead. And if he gets close to me and he hits that sword mark, I'm dead. My sword mark is like pew. I do like a cut and then like a kick move or something like that, and it's real slow, and he's just like backs up and he's like, pew, one shot, I'm dead. I get bombed. I did okay. I was way better at the game than he was. I did okay. I got him down to where I was able to kill him once, and had I got one more kill out of 1. But he only needed 5 kills against me, and when it's one shot and I'm dead, it's like I'm Contra and he actually has a life bar. It was a bad deal for me. So I got wrecked. And everybody in the room, this is the way judges worked. Judges was anybody who was not playing the game who was then trusted to oversee the progression of said tournament. We did all kinds of tournaments. they decided that that was not a fair competition, that I stood no chance whatsoever, so the rules were reworked on the spot. Now, I had agreed to these rules, so technically I lost, and that's not fair, but they reworked the rules on the spot and let me play again, and he lost. And I got all that money, and then as an apology, basically, because I really felt he got robbed, he went with me for breakfast in the morning to Hardee's, and I bought his, because I was like, dude, I won. I'm not about to hand you this money. Don't misunderstand. But you got cheated. I'll do something for you. Now, this progressed and went on for a very long time. Gamers United was something that I legitimately looked forward to. We had Mortal Kombat tournaments where we would do the random things, like we do the combat cars, or we do the chessboard games, and just different things like that. And the chessboard game was a cool thing where we'd be like, okay, so you pick your pawns or Ermac or whatever, and you get those, and you're like, this guy, so my buddy Britt, he's Ermac, and Seth is going to play this, and Brandon's going to be these guys. And then so that's how that worked. And then if your chess piece went off the board, of course you lost. And if your team won, you got the pot, whatever it was. Like everybody put in like $1 or something. It wasn't huge. It was just enough to keep it interesting. We were playing almost like a gambling game of sorts. But it kept the club active because there was always a legitimate reward that everybody was looking for. And not everybody knew the games we were going to play. So while sometimes we'd play something like that Gundam game, or we'd play Street Fighter 2, and Street Fighter 2, like, there was no chance. I was winning that. During that time in that group, there's no way. Nobody in that group even came close. Anthony had the closest thing to a chance, and while he would beat me in other fighting games, the original Street Fighter 2 games, we're talking about the New Challengers edition, no way. Didn't stand a chance. I'd pick Cammy and I'd win that whole tournament hands down, wouldn't even have to try. There were times that I would be surprised where I would be messing around, and that was something I did a lot, where I would basically beat myself, because we'd play things like Dead or Alive 2, and I was so good that I could literally just pick random and win every fight, no matter what. Didn't even have to try. Never had to try. I even had like little things where I'd be like, I'm only going to fight you with punches, or I'm only going to fight you with kicks, or I will only counter, and I'd win those fights. But then I would like get stupid, and I would like really want to see a certain move or do something that was really fancy and really tricky, and kind of be like, look how good I am, and that would get me beat. Well, this kind of atmosphere went on for like a year and a half, and that doesn't sound like it's that long, but you figure we met up every single weekend, and every weekend we had a tournament thing, and we got all kinds of games. We bought like the Looney Tune fighting game and shit like that. So there was all kinds of deals where I'd come in and I'd be like, all right, it's Xbox. All I have to do is compete tonight. So I got my sodas, and I got my big old giant bag of Doritos, and I got my jalapeno dip, and I'm like, I'm ready. I'm fighting. If I could do this. And we'd play these games, and it would be a gaming session that would last all night. And this attic room had two spaces, where it had one area that was kind of like set up almost like a small living room. It was like a bed, a couch, a chair, and like then like some of his stuff was in there, and then the TV. And that's where a lot of the gaming took place. And then there was another room outside of that had a bunk bed set up, so like people could stay over or whatever. And it had like a table and a bunch of tabletop stuff. So you'd go out there and you'd hit the tabletop games, and you'd play like either games that we made or games that we had, or we'd do D&D sessions while that fight was going on in there. And then they'd call you for your turns and shit like that, and they'd run the tournaments. We did this for like a year and a half, constant. It never died. And there was always something new to play. There was always something new to try out. And so now, when the group gets together, the reason you will sometimes hear it called out on the show or whatever, that the group does not game well together, that we don't do that, it's because we legitimately used to, and we used to do it very well, and now we don't. Like, I play ESO, and it's just me. And like Shane plays Final Fantasy 14, and I don't like 14, so I'm not getting into that. And Nick has been not disillusioned. He's been hurt by it. He got crapped on enough to not like it. It put a bad taste in his mouth. So now he's done with 14, so he's not playing that, and he won't play ESO. And he's kind of into Star Wars, but for some reason he won't download the game and play it. But he did re-download STO, and so maybe we'll play that sometimes together. But Nobody plays Soul Calibur online or anything like that. The groups don't meet up and do anything. Everybody's playing different games by themselves all the time. And then we get together and we can spend 3, 4, 5 hours of the night being what do you want to do? Do you want to do? No? How about we play this? And then they're like, no, not feeling that. And then maybe 2 or 3 people will be like, well, let's play this game. But then this group over here, because I'll have 12 people here, and you cannot get everybody on the same page. And that's why Gamers United is looked at very fondly, and it's called up in other shows where we talk about it. Because if you've been on the show long enough, you've heard us mention, oh man, Gamers United, I miss Gamers United. We miss it because it used to be a thing that kept people interested, that kept people occupied, and everybody was a part of it. Because you didn't have to worry about your skill level or whatever. You were just hanging out and having fun. And somewhere along the lines of growing up, which often happens, this attitude got lost. And that's the reason why Gamers United was such a big deal. And that's the reason why we hung on to certain aspects for so long. I didn't start playing games online until very recently. Maybe I was 30 years old. Because it's not just from being old, it's because this was the atmosphere that I lived in, where you always had an arcade atmosphere. There was always somebody on your left, always somebody on your right. And then you play games online, and it's you wear these earmuffs like this, and you do this, and that's great. But now the rest of the world is closed out to me. And I don't hear what's going on around me. And that creates a disassociation that's kind of damaging to what I'm trying to do. So now I have to close out the rest of the world so I can go into this internet world. And it's disorienting. And it's not the same thing that I grew up with, and that's why there's a fondness for what Gamers United was and why it's missed so extremely, because now it's weird when you, I'm sure a good portion of us already know, but when you grow up, you're going to reach this point where you have a wife and you have a kid, and then you're trying to put headphones on and sit in the living room, which is awkward enough because you're in a social room, but you're not in that room. You're on the headphones on the TV through some sort of group thing like the PlayStation party, where you're trying to talk to 5 other people that are not the people in the room. And then sometimes the people in your room, your kids or whatever, they're oh, what are you playing? What are you doing? Oh, check that out. And then you're trying to respond to that, and then they're what are you talking about? And it's a fucking mess. It's much cooler and much more... It's just a better social feeling to have people gaming in the room with you, and it's something that's lost, and that's what Gamers United was, and that's why it's missed the way it is when you hear it talked about on the show. And that closes out another topic in the book. So I'm going to get out of here. I have spoken. Take what you will from it.